what do you want to lead with? Welcome to Oddball. I'm Amin Elhassan in studio with Charlotte Wilder down in Miami. We're still here.
Hello.
Yeah, we're still alive, even though it's been so chilly.
So chilly.
Oh, my God. What?
I love it. I feel like I'm home in the Northeast. I brought like a...
You
I
love
don't
this?
actually. Yeah,
you just
I
left
can...
weather to come down for not so great weather?
Yeah, I'm trying to be positive. I mean, I can wear my sweatshirts outside.
No, Jason Kidd, I won't be positive. I refuse to be positive.
More positivity in the NBA. I'm LeBron.
The hell with the setting up what the show is going to be about. Well, let's talk about that right now. Okay. Jason Kidd and Tim McMahon of ESPN got involved in a little back and forth. Roll the video.
Those two are the best in the world, and we feel very comfortable with those two having the ball. Sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't, but we learn from it, and I think they've answered that question from day one. As you just mentioned, they're one of the best, if not the best, in clutch time. But that was a big thing you guys wanted to make a big deal about last year. But you're not making a big deal about it this year because it's going good, right? So write some positive.
I just asked you a question.
And I'm giving you a answer. Like, you guys, you know, there's all right to write positive stuff. People will read your positive. You don't always have to be negative, right? Like, it's just the world's already negative enough, right? So let's see some positive stuff on some positive people that are doing their job on a nightly basis.
So Jason Kidd says, you guys don't write positive. Write some positive. Tim McMahon said, all I did was ask you a question. And Jason Kidd says, I'm giving you a bleeping answer.
Which he's not.
It sounds like he's bitching about the question.
Yeah. He's not really giving him an answer. You can't say you're giving him an answer. Yeah, the positivity thing, I mean, if you win, if everything's working, it'll be a positive story.
Well, I think Jason Kidd would argue that they have been winning. Right? Not only did they win that game, but they're one of the top teams in the conference, and it's working to a point where they're winning, you know,
right.
So
I feel like that comes with expectation, though, right? Like, you have Luka and Kyrie, and there were questions all along in the offseason, like, is this going to work? Is Kyrie going to show up? What is this going to look like? And then people are going to keep asking about that, even if you are winning. So it's sort of the hand you're dealt in some ways for what the narrative was shaped to be. So I get it in that he's like, can you just write something nice? But it's also that's not how it works. I wonder if I don't really get it either. Maybe it's because I came up on the internet getting yelled at a lot and just learned to be like, okay, well, I guess I can't care what they think. Or if it's because I'm not faced with it face to face. Maybe it's the head coach going out there and being like, I have to talk to you every day. And like the grading of it. Yeah. But I also feel like the coolest thing you can do if somebody is pissing you off is not let them know that they're pissing you off. Like, it is, if he had come out there and been, and just like, you keep your cool, you answer the question, like.
Well, the cool thing about this is Tim McMahon, like, kind of has a history of getting on the wrong side of guys. And I think he does an excellent job. We've talked about his work here before.
Yeah.
I think he does a good job, but he is not a cuddly, PR-ish type of writer.
Right.
So there's the situation, I remember a few years ago, it was in the playoffs where Rick Carlisle benched Rajon Rondo and didn't play him for like the entire second half of a game. And Tim said, was that a coaching decision? Or was that an X's and O's decision? Or was that like a
personal? Yeah.
And Rick Carlisle decided to do the time-honored tradition of someone asks you a question you don't want to answer, so then you answer about something, you talk about something completely different.
Yeah.
And so Tim was like, well, but was that a coaching decision or not? And Rick says, you keep asking the same question. I don't know how many times you want me to answer it. And Tim says, well, just one, because you haven't answered it yet.
Right.
Like that's the kind of guy that Tim McMahon is.
Which is a good journalist.
Which absolutely. He doesn't get caught up in the red herring. So the question he asked was about Luka and Kyrie in the clutch. And Jason Kidd's answer, to reiterate, says, they're one of the best, if not the best, in clutch time. But that was a big thing you guys wanted to make a big deal about last year, but you're not making a big deal about it this year because shit's going good. So write some positive shit. It's like,
also, though, he didn't say the question was like, why are they bad in clutch time?
No,
he asked him about. That's a very telling reaction
the dynamic,
from Jason
right?
Kidd. Actually,
so Jason Kidd is answering the question, and he started talking about last year that nobody talked about. And by the way, he's asking about the dynamic, so maybe there's something positive that's going to come out of this one, but you're already crying about, well, you guys haven't talked. He's asking you about it.
Right.
But then the most important part about all this is the LeBron parachuting in. And this is from Twitter. For Jay to curse, you know he wasn't happy at all. I don't think I ever heard him curse.
Okay.
I mean, from competing versus him, teaming up with him, and playing for him, never. He was hot and quite frankly, right. Love J Kidd.
Look, LeBron is just all about spreading positivity and love and good feelings. I mean, he's just trying to fill the NBA and Twitter with roses and hearts and little emojis that come out. He's the flower girl of the NBA.
I like that. We could end on that. Hey, second half of our conversation with Ethan Strauss. Next. A few days earlier, we had a great conversation with Ethan Strauss about the NBA and the tech world intersecting. That conversation went on. We actually had more. Here's the rest of it right here on Oddball. Adam Silver wants to be a tech bro. What led you to that conclusion?
People complaining about him. People complaining about him within the league and within Fifth Avenue. And maybe not complaining. It's always balanced with Adam. You know, he's not somebody that anybody is just 100% against or 100% hates. It's usually balanced with that kind of, well, he does this well, but he doesn't do that well. And I think everybody would concede that Adam is very enamored with European soccer. So there's an aspect of wanting to be in soccer or wanting to mirror soccer and adopt things that work for soccer. The in-season tournament is just heavily borrowed from international soccer. And then he's quite enamored with the tech world and wanting to be a tech guy and doing the big display of entering the NBA into the metaverse with Shaq and whatever coach that he named himself in that situation. And I do think there's a bit of searching for the big idea. You know, can we build the entire plane out of the black box? That sort of thinking, I think, has been definitional to the Adam Silver era. And in a way, I think looking at it from this perspective is almost a different narrative than what you hear a lot of old school NBA people complain about when it comes to Adam. The complaint is he's too soft. He's too indulgent of the players. He's too player friendly. And that all might be true, but I think rather than viewing this as about softness or meekness, one might actually view it as this guy's got bigger ambitions. And just like maybe Evan Wash doesn't look at the breakdown of Hawkeye as top of mind because he's viewing the in-season tournament as the apple of his eye, maybe Adam Silver has bigger ambitions that he's focused on than whatever the players want. Whatever the players want, Adam just goes, yeah, sure, give it to them. Fine. I'm focused on this. You know, we're focused on this big idea. And that's really more true to the culture of the NBA corporate structure.
Ethan, it seems to me that so many tech companies operate this way. They're like, okay, let's disrupt and innovate and be revolutionaries as opposed to like actually taking care of the people who work for us. Do you think any of this is, you know, with the TV deal coming up and with so many people speculating about streaming and about perhaps a tech company gets involved, do you think that any of this is being done with an eye towards that?
Definitely. I mean, I think that this Hawkeye technology, a lot of people think it has something to do with the financial interests of the league. That this wasn't just the NBA looking and going, we want the best statistics, and this is the best way to provide our coaches and players with data. Like, nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks this deal was done according to that. Everybody thinks it was done with financial interest in mind. And when you look at Sony, and when you look at how Sony has a tight relationship with Disney, and you look at the aforementioned Toy Story, I do think the TV product and the view of the NBA as an entertainment entity has something to do with all of this. And it was interesting hearing from people within the league, their view of it, to what you're saying, is that they agreed to all this without actually understanding how it worked on a granular level for the employees. They didn't know. They just went, okay, this is our big idea. And there's something called clearing the adaptive valley, which sometimes works out great, where you make a big promise and maybe it'd be really hard to realize that promise, but you work your ass off. And if you realize it, that's how a major leap forward can happen for an individual in a career or an institution. But, you know, there are those moments where you actually don't clear the valley, where you're Homer Simpson trying to go over the canyon. And this might be an instance of that. That has to happen too. Sometimes people can't clear the adaptive valley. And for all the optimism within the tech scene, sometimes that optimism leads to disaster. Sometimes it leads to $1 trillion company.
Mark Cuban went on All the Smoke and he said, the NFL kills us on TV, but we kill them on social 3 times as great as they kill us on TV. What did you make of that comment?
I'm trying to pull something from my mind of Bomani Jones talking about centers being credited for things that aren't your job, and that's become part of the way that they've been assessed. And that's kind of how I look at it, where, okay, that's cool. I don't want to be dismissive of that. A lot of people are trying to do that and trying to spread the word of their company or of their brand on social media, but you get to the problem of economically appropriating it. I'm not sure how you turn that into money. I don't want to seem like that's all that matters. I actually do care about the cultural relevance of the NBA. And
well, he points to like the age discrepancy as well, that they kill us on TV because their audience is 55 up and our audience is younger. And so I think he's doing some extrapolation there.
I think the problem with that way of thinking is that you think it would have represented itself in growth by now. And the problem for the NBA is that they were singing the song a decade ago when they had twice as many viewers on nationally televised games than they do right now. And the NFL has held steady the whole time. They haven't lost. The NBA has lost considerably. Some of that is because young people just aren't so TV inclined. And a lot of people, you hear this all the time. You know, you hear, my kid doesn't watch any of the games, but he, you know, goes and watches the highlights, right, and they sort of absorb the NBA through this Cliff Notes version. But I don't think this is going to save the NBA. I think this is a general problem with sports. Generation Alpha, which is just the incoming cohort of teens. I wrote about this recently, that in survey data, only 15%, that's not 50, that's 15, say they enjoy watching sports or that they watch sports. And so I think that all the leagues are facing this existential crisis in the long term. And I don't think any of them are really well positioned against it. And I don't think the NBA is uniquely well positioned to have the hearts and minds of the youth. I think that they're all in a tricky position there. And it's going to be hard for me to believe that they're in a great spot with that until I see something that looks like growth relative to the other leagues. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing the NBA diminish at the same exact trajectory as old grain baseball, mostly because I think when you have a bunch of inventory and your sport is non-event based, in this culture, you just get drowned out with all the other noise. So I think that's happening to the NBA, just like it's happening to the other sports, even if their average age might be younger and even if they're doing better on social media.
Something that confuses me when we talk about all of this of like TV versus social, don't you need TV to get the social clips? Like, isn't that always going to be some sort of symbiotic relationship?
It's like people say we don't need local newspapers.
Yeah, it's like that's where the stories come from.
But then, like, that's where the stories come from.
The more your event looks like a big TV event with that sort of grandeur, I think the more resonant culturally it can be when it goes to these other outlets. And I think it's a mistake to think that you can recreate that somewhere else. TV is still TV. It still looks more important. It still matters more. I think the trick is to make it seem like something you need to tune into as opposed to background noise. Now, the NBA is trying to approach that with the in-season tournament. I don't know that's necessarily going to work in its current incarnation, because it's like these are regular season games that they are kind of repackaging like one of those mortgage-backed securities into something else. But they're at least thinking along the correct lines, that they need to do something to grab your attention. It's interesting though. Here's a stat that was crazy to me. Speaking of those games that they play over there in Europe for the NFL, when Kansas City played in Germany, I believe it was Germany, it was on early in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what percentage of the TVs in the Kansas City market were watching that game when it was on? Of the TVs that were on,
I'm gonna guess 40%.
94%.
What?
Come on, man.
94%.
There ain't that many.
Now,
There's got to be people in Kansas City who don't give a shit about football, though,
Well-
right? That's the
well,
6% is what you're telling me?
Those are the people who don't have televisions. I mean, they're reading.
Well, here's the meaning of that, because in a way, it's about how the NFL is king, but it's about something else, which is that the rest of TV is disintegrated and fallen away. Because back in the day on a Sunday morning, if you're in Kansas City, you would be watching the local news or the morning show or whatever you might watch on a Sunday morning. But increasingly, television is just this empty arena that sports brings a bunch of people to fill. And then the sporting event ends and everybody just walks out of the arena and goes somewhere else. And that's the dynamic currently. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I'm rambling. This is a bit of a digression, but that's part of that story.
Is it literally like an arena where we have dark days and we have event days and that's it? That's all, but the arena still stays, doesn't go away on the dark days?
I mean, maybe we're going to get there. I don't know what's on Comedy Central right now. I know when I was in high school, Comedy Central was a big deal, and the Chappelle Show was on there and all these other shows people watched, but I have no idea what's going on there. And I guess it wouldn't be inconceivable to me that you would have cable channels that would just during the day be this open space or something more like public access TV. But yeah, we're at the point where a lot of TV just matters so much less relative to sports, especially the NFL, especially college football, especially the event-based sports. And so it becomes a question of how do you fill the empty arena?
Do you think that part of that would be fewer NBA games? I mean, having, right? Like if you have a weekly
definitely
tune-in event, that's always seemed to me like, well, that's why people like the NFL, they know exactly when it is, and that's when they watch their team. But then obviously that poses problems for, ticket sales. So I don't know what the answer is there.
No, you're identifying the dynamic correctly. And there's something that I call the Arnovitz model, created by Kevin Arnovitz maybe about 10 years ago at ESPN, of the NBA should have, I think it was 44 games, and they should all be on a Tuesday or Thursday. So everybody, because it's not just about the scarcity, it's also about the expectation. Mm-hmm. Everybody in America knows their college football team is probably going to play on Saturday. Everybody knows their NFL team is probably going to play on Sunday, unless it's the marquee game on one of those other nights. And so in the Arnovitz model, you would have that regularity with that scarcity. And then maybe you could have a marquee game on Saturday, and that would be our kind of version of Monday Night Football. Something like that, I believe, would just no doubt help the NBA with this problem and make it feel more like an event and help it grow. But to what you're saying, nobody, or at least very few of the people running NBA teams, want to take that risk. And I form it as risk because people always say they don't want to give up the money. I think it's about risk, because if you believe this is going to make you more popular, the NFL makes more money than any of the other American leagues. So I think it will work out for you. I think that you would make more money, but that's scary to give up all of that just in the short, all that guaranteed money for the chance of that. If they want to grow, I believe they're going to have to make that painful decision. Hope they should have, hindsight's 2020, probably have done it when they were really riding high in 2014. But this is the decision. If they want to grow, at least domestically, I think that's a decision that they will have to make. But it doesn't seem like there's the will to make it at this particular point in time.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about with you is, I think, one of your most recent things you wrote about, which is the in-season tournament, at least as a TV product, hasn't necessarily proven itself to be this revolutionary thing, at least so far. But more importantly, it is all but a staging ground to attract a streamer like Netflix to come in, do a reality show around it, and sell the live rights to the games in the future.
That's what's hot in sports right now. It's you turn your sport into a reality TV show, which, I mean, the dream is Netflix, because Netflix has over 250 million customers. So if you're golf, it's amazing to have Full Swing. And not only are you selling a part of yourself, but it's just this great free advertising. And somebody like me, I'm a very casual golf fan, but I watch Full Swing and I go, oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. Yeah. These are now characters in my life.
Formula One is the best example. A sport that was nowhere near on the national consciousness in America. And in less than 5 years, now all of a sudden, people won't shut the up about it. Like, oh, I'm going to Vegas for the F1. I'm like, when did this happen?
I mean, I love the invitation. Yeah, that's the original. They've pioneered this. Now, here's the problem. Since I wrote that article, which was in reference to a report in the Sports Business Journal that Netflix was interested, Lucas Shaw, who's a very plugged-in entertainment reporter for Bloomberg, I believe, reported, I just talked to Netflix. They're not interested. They don't want it. So the NBA is very aggressive about seeding the entertainment infrastructure with word of their ascendance. And I don't say it as a critique of the NBA and Michael Bass. I tip my cap to them that they're so aggressive about it. But I think in this case, it might have resulted in egg on their face, because the report of, Netflix is interested in this. Because of what I'm saying, the NBA would need Netflix more than Netflix would need the NBA. If Netflix wanted to do that sort of Full Swing type show, it might be like how Stern would give China the games for free back in the day. I almost think they should just do it for free, since it's such great advertising. And I do think it might be an indication that, I'm not saying that it won't go well for the NBA with their TV rights, just that there's some anxiety, there's some worry. ESPN and Turner just don't have the money they once had. We have gotten a look at ESPN's finances because Disney has opened them up to potentially being purchased, and people opened up the books, and there's just not a lot there. There's not a lot there to spend on NBA rights. And by many indications, Warner Brothers, Turner, whatever we want to call them, they're even worse off. Discovery, whatever we want to call them, they look like they might even be worse off. They're making billions less than they thought they would be a couple years ago. And Matt Bellany, the great entertainment reporter Matt Bellany, I think, was the first to sound the alarm and go, I don't know if these guys can even be competitive based on what I'm hearing about how much money they're losing. So I think there's a lot of anxiety for the NBA that they just might have lost out on a game of musical chairs. And that might be why you're seeing so many headlines about everybody who's interested in them. It's not unlike, what we often see with the way certain reporters who are friendly with certain agents really try to broadcast, and with coaches too, promote all the interest in them. I think something like that might be happening on the corporate level.
Ethan, the Substack is called houseofstrauss.substack.com. You can find all of Ethan's musings, and not all of them are behind a paywall. Some of them are actually free. How about that?
Some of them are. I'll try to dress up better. I'll try to look less like, as you put it, Mark Maron on a bad day.
I'm glad you took the jacket off. The jacket was
giving you're in a bunker, but no, you're doing great, Ethan.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This was a great conversation, just to take a step back from it, good questions. Not every day I get to talk about these things.
Thanks, Ethan.
That's going to do it for us today.
Charlotte will try to be better tomorrow.